Hello, friends. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to do my best to keep this mask on, however, we did a mask on. Yeah, I'm going to go in for it, yeah. Yes, so I'm going to try to put my mask on. I'm having a little bit of a hard time breathing. We'll see how it goes. My name is Leo W.T. I am a former UPB student. I am a small business owner. I am a parent to 5 insanely diverse and quite queer children, and I myself am a trans person of non-binary experience. I live in Olean, New York, and my family comes from the Bradford area, so that's kind of why I'm here today. I always like to come back and be like, hey, you can survive it. You know what I mean? That seems like a good plan. So that's who I am, and today I would like to talk to you folks a little bit about moving from apologetics to activism. One of the cool parts of my very incredibly queer story is that I've actually come out 4 times, because like one wasn't enough apparently. So the first time that I came out as a queer person, and that started out by coming out to myself. I identified as female at the time, and and I understood myself to be a person who was a lesbian. Fast forward a few years later of living just kind of being my own authenticity, and in my story, I came out as a trans person. And my wife, who is a lesbian and is ever so gracious, completely was willing to put her own happiness on the line so that I could have self-actualization. So the moral of the story is find someone who loves you like that. But then I came out as non-binary. During over the course of COVID, I became very, very publicly involved with the Black Lives Matter movement in Olean, New York, and I decided if they're going to write about me in the newspaper, they might as well use my pronouns. So I decided to quite aggressively assert my non-binary identity. And then the 4th coming out, because 3 weren't enough, happened over the course of the past year. I actually came out as a pastor. So what most people don't know about my story is that my undergraduate degree is a Bachelor's of Science in Pastoral Ministry with a concentration in the Bible, and a minor in the Bible and a concentration in church growth and development. So what that means is not only had I drank the evangelical Kool-Aid, I was a pastor's kid, I was a missionary's granddaughter, all of these things. Not only had I drank the Kool-Aid, I had double-fisted the Kool-Aid. And I decided, you know what, let's do this. And let me tell you, it's not a bang-up time to come out between your junior and senior year of pastoral ministry college at a conservative evangelical college. It went about as well as you would expect it to go. But that's part of my story that I really had to divorce when I realized that I was queer. And so what ended up happening to me was I had a few good friends in administration, and they looked at me in the eyes at my college that I was at the time, and they said, we will make sure that you graduate, and we promise you that. And so the day that I was handed my transcripts confirming I was going to be graduating, the Dean of Students and the Dean of Community Life tendered their resignation because they had fulfilled their commitment to me. And for the past 11 years since that day of graduation, I've kind of been wandering aimlessly because I was told that who I was couldn't be. It was a logical impossibility. And then recently I decided, too bad. And I decided that I was going to come out and assert the fact that I have every bit as much claim to the scriptures as any person who's behind the pulpit today, because I've done the work and I've done the studying. And if I were to be straight, if I were to be cisgendered, I would have been ordained 11 years ago. I just received word this Tuesday that actually had been approved for the ordination process with the United Church of Christ as an out queer trans person, which is really exciting. But something that my experience has taught me, I find echoed in the words of Audre Lorde, who is a brown activist who happens to be a lesbian. Audre Lorde said something to the effect of, my existence, just the act of existing, is a protest. And in doing so, if we see our lives and our existence as a protest, every day becomes a chance for us to move from apologetics to activism. Let me explain a little bit about what I mean about apologetics. Apologetics is a branch of like Christian thought, where basically you can prove everything in the Bible. Like they're really concerned with connecting all the dots. But I'm no longer interested in an apologetic that says I exist. Because I exist, whether anyone else wants to believe it or not. There are over 22,000 queer species in the world, including intersex, asexual, non-binary in terms of gender, over 22,000 queer species in the world. In fact, one of the oldest living organisms that we know of is called Wolbachia. It is a, oh, I hope there's no science people in the room. It's a bacteria, and I learned about it by proxy of my study into queer eco-spirituality last semester. But Wolbachia is one of the oldest living organisms on the planet, and Wolbachia itself has been able to survive the course of our planet by being a decidedly queer organism that can do what it needs to do to survive, much like queer people. Apologetics is a thing where we're just supposed to prove that we are valid. But aside from the 22,000 queer species in our planet that speak to queer existence being as natural as any other existence, we can look also to the Torah, in the Talmud, and the Bible. Hillel, who is a Jewish sage, talks about the idea as early as the 3rd century that there are 6 genders, and he lists them out in holy Jewish writings. In the Bible, in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, one of the disciples actually baptizes a trans person and commissions them to go out into the world and to do ministry. Look it up, it's there, I promise you. But I'm no longer interested in historical or biological or religious proof of my existence. Because my existence, in and of itself, is valid, and so is yours. I spent a lot of years looking for proof that it was okay to be me. I spent a lot of years looking for proof that it was okay to be me in whatever sector of the world that I ended up in. But I'm no longer interested in speaking to the cheap seats, and I would encourage you to see that as well. We do not have to prove we exist because we exist. It is an empirical fact that transgender people exist because I am one. It is an empirical fact that non-binary people exist because I am one. I don't need nature. I don't need philosophy. I don't need religion to validate me. And I'm no longer accepting systems where I'm only considered to exist. I'm moving forward into systems and into my own identity as someone that has a voice and that is valid and that is needed in the world because I exist. And as I exist, so do you. In much the same way, the names of the transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming individuals that were victims to violence in this past year are valid as well. We know that so far to date, according to the Human Rights Campaign, we have 46 individuals who are victims of violence because of their gender orientation or identity. Unfortunately, there are many more likely that we don't know of due to misrepresentation. So the reason that we come here today and that we embrace our existence is so that we can also embrace their existence. And we'll do that by saying their names. The name, throughout the concept of history, is frequently a religious concept. In Roman Catholicism and Islam, you receive a new name upon your baptism or acceptance into the religion. As a trans person or a non-binary person, we have what I would argue is an equally important religious experience when we pick out our names, and we truly find a way to live into them. So I would encourage you today, on Trans Day of Remembrance, to give honor to the people who have passed this year by saying their names, to give honor to yourself by saying your name, and to continue to keep speaking until we no longer have to apologize or prove that we exist, but rather we are just accepted. Thank you so much.